Grantaraj ki jai. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Janmadhyasya yato nivayad itaratascha swavigyaswara.
Janmadhyasya yatam vayaritarataschate swavigyaswara.
Tene Brahma Hridaya Adikavaye Muyanti Yatsuraya.
Tenne Brahma Hridaya Adikavaye Mujanti Suraya.
Tejo Varimadam Yata Vinimayo Yatra Trisargomisha.
Tejo Varimridan Jata Vinimayo Jatra Trisargomisha.
Damna Svena Sada Nirastakuhakam Satyam Param Dimahi.
Dhamna Svena Sada Nirastakuhakam Satyam Param Dimahi.
O my Lord, Shri Krishna, son of Vasudeva.
O my Lord, Sri Krishna, son of Vasudeva.
O all-pervading personality of Godhead.
O all-pervading personality of Godhead.
I offer my respectful obeisances unto you.
I offer my respectful obeisances unto you.
I meditate upon Lord Shri Krishna because he is the absolute truth.
I meditate upon Lord Shri Krishna because he is the absolute
and
truth.
the primeval cause of all causes.
And the primeval cause of all causes.
Of the creation, sustenance, and destruction of the manifested universes.
Of the creation, sustenance, and destruction of the manifested
He
universes.
is directly and indirectly conscious of all manifestations.
He is directly and indirectly conscious of all manifestations.
And he's independent because there's no other cause beyond him.
And he is independent because there's no other cause beyond him.
It is he only who first imparted the Vedic knowledge unto the heart of Brahmaji.
It is he only who first imparted Vedic knowledge unto the heart of Brahmaji.
The original living being.
The original living being.
By him, even the great sages and demigods are placed into illusion.
By him, even the great sages and demigods are placed into illusion.
As one is bewildered by the illusory representations.
As one is bewildered by the illusory representation.
Of water seen on fire or land seen on water.
Of water seen on fire, land seen on water.
Only because of him do the material universes.
Only because of him do the material universes.
Temporarily manifested by the reactions of the three modes of nature.
Temporarily manifested by the reaction of the three modes of nature.
Appear factual, although they are unreal.
Appear factual, although they are unreal.
I therefore meditate upon him, Lord Shri Krishna.
I therefore meditate upon him, Lord Shri Krishna.
Who is eternally existent in the transcendental abode.
Who is eternally existent in the transcendental abode.
Which is forever free from the illusory representations in the material world.
Which is forever free from the illusory representation of the material world.
I meditate upon him, for he is the absolute truth.
I meditate upon him, for he is the absolute truth.
Dharma Pujita Kaitruvutra.
Dharma Pujita Kaitruvutra.
Paramo Nirmatsaranam Satam.
Paramo Nirmatsaranam Satam.
Vedyam Vastavam Atra Vastu.
Vedyam Vastavam Atra Vastu.
Shivadam Tapatrayon Mulanam.
Shivadam Taputrayon.
Srimad Bhagavate Mahamani.
Srimad Bhagavate Mahamani.
Kimva Prayer Ishvaraha.
Kimva Prayer Ishvara.
Sadhurhidya Avarudyate Tra.
Sadhurhidya Avarudyate Tra.
Kriti Bihi Sususubhistakshana.
Kriti Bihi Sususubhistakshana.
Completely rejecting all religious activities which are materially motivated.
Completely rejecting all religious activities which are materially motivated.
This Bhagavad Purana propounds the highest truth.
This Bhagavad Purana propounds the high truth.
Which is understandable by those devotees who are fully pure in heart.
Which is understandable by those devotees who are fully pure
The
in heart.
highest truth is reality distinguished from illusion for the welfare of all.
The highest truth is the reality distinguished from illusion for the welfare of all.
Such truth uproots the threefold miseries.
Such a truth uproots the threefold miseries.
This beautiful Bhagavatam compiled by the great sage Vyasadeva in his maturity.
This beautiful Bhagavatam compiled by the great sage Vyasadeva's maturity.
Is sufficient in itself for God realization.
It's sufficient in itself for God realization.
What is the need of any other scripture?
What is the need of the other scripture?
As soon as one attentively and submissively hears the message of Bhagavatam.
As soon as one attentively and submissively hears the message of Bhagavatam.
By this culture of knowledge.
By this culture of knowledge.
The Supreme Lord is established within his heart.
The Supreme Lord is established within his heart.
Nigama kapataror galitam phalam.
Nigama kapatam phalam.
Sukhamukad amrita dravya samyutam.
Sukhamukad amrita dravya samyutam.
Pibata bhagavatam rasam alayam.
Pibata bhagavatam rasam alayam.
Muhur aho rasika bhuvibhavukaha.
Muhur aho rasika bhuvibhavukaha.
O expert and thoughtful men, relish Srimad Bhagavatam.
O expert and thoughtful men, relish Srimad Bhagavatam.
The mature fruit of the desire to read Vedic literatures.
The mature fruit of the desire to read the Vedic literatures.
It emanated from the lips of Sri Sukadeva Goswami.
It emanated from the lips of Sri Sukadeva Goswami.
Therefore, this fruit has become even more tasteful.
Therefore, this fruit has become even more tasteful.
Although its nectarian juice was already relishful for all,
although its nectarian juice was already reachable for all,
including liberated souls.
including liberated souls.
Shinvatam Swakata Krishna,
Shrimvatam Swakata Krishna,
Punya Shravana Kirtana,
Punya Shravana Kirtana,
Hridyantak Stohi Badrani,
Hridyanta Suhya Bhadrani,
Vidunati Suhitsatam.
Vidunoti Surisatam.
To hear about Krishna from Vedic literatures,
To hear about Krishna from the Vedic literature,
or to hear from him directly through the Bhagavad Gita,
or to hear from him directly through the Bhagavad
is
Gita,
itself righteous activity.
it is self-righteous activity.
And for one who hears about Krishna,
And for one who hears about Krishna,
Lord Krishna, who is dwelling in everyone's heart,
Lord Krishna is dwelling within everyone's heart,
acts as a best wishing friend,
acts as the best wishing
and
friend.
purifies the devotee who constantly engages in hearing of him.
He purifies the devotee who constantly engages in hearing him.
Nastapresu bhadresu
Nasta Praisha Bhadrishu
nityam bhagavata sevaya
Nityam Bhagavata Seva
bhagavati uttamasloke
Bhagavati Uttamasloke
bhaktir bhavati naistike.
Bhakti Bhavati Nasti.
In this way, a devotee naturally develops his dormant transcendental knowledge.
In this way, the devotee naturally develops his dormant transcendental knowledge.
As he hears more about Krishna from the Bhagavatam
As he hears more about Krishna from the Bhagavatam
and from the devotees,
and from the
he
devotees,
becomes fixed in the devotional service of the Lord.
he becomes fixed in his devotional service.
Tadarajastamo bhava
Tadarajastamo Bhava
kamalobhadayaschaye cheta
Kamalobhadayaschaye
itairanavidam
Chaita Itaranavira
stitvam sattve prasidati.
Stitam Sadve Prasidati.
By development of devotional service,
By development of devotional
one
service,
becomes freed from the modes of passion and ignorance,
one becomes freed from the modes of passion of
and
ignorance.
thus material lust and avarice are diminished.
And thus material lust and avarice are diminished.
Evam prasanna manaso
Evam Prasanna Manas
bhagavat bhakti yogataha
Bhagavat Bhakti Yogata
bhagavat tattva vijnanam
Bhagavat Tattva Vijnanam
mukta sangasya jayate.
Mukta Sangha Sajayati.
When these impurities are wiped away,
When all these impurities are wiped away,
the candidate remains steady in his position of pure goodness,
the candidate remains steady in his position of pure goodness,
becomes enlivened by devotional service,
becomes enlivened by devotional
and
service,
understands the science of God perfectly.
and understands the science of God.
Vidyate hridaya grantis,
Vidyate Hridaya Grantis,
chidyante sarvasamsaya,
Chidyante Sarvasamsaya,
chiyante chasya karmani,
Kiyante Chasya Karmani,
krista evat manishvare.
Druta Evan Manishwari.
Thus, bhakti yoga serves the heart not of material affection,
Thus the Bhakti Yoga serves the heart of the material affection
and enables one to come at once to the stage of a samsayam samagram,
and enables one to come at once to the stage of Assumption Samagrama,
understanding of the supreme absolute truth, personality of Godhead.
understanding the supreme absolute truth, the personality of God.
Therefore, only by hearing from Krishna or from his devotee in Krishna consciousness
Therefore, only by hearing from Krishna or from his devotees in Krishna consciousness
can one understand the science of Krishna.
can one understand the science of Krishna.
Srimad Bhagvatam, Canto 2, Chapter 2, verse number 24. Vaishnavanaram yati vihayasya gata
Vaishvanaram yati viyaya sagata
susumnaya brahma patena sochisa
Shusho Maya Brahma Patena Sochisa
vibhuta kalko tavarir udastad
Viduta Kalko Tarere Udasta
prayati chakram ripasai sumaram.
Prayati Chakram Nripa Sheshumaram.
Translation by Srila Prabhupada. O king, when such a mystic passes over the Milky Way by the illuminating Susumna to reach the highest planet, Brahmaloka, he goes first to Vaishvanara, the planet of the deity of fire, wherein he becomes completely cleansed of all contaminations, and thereafter he still goes higher to the circle of Sisumara to relate with Lord Hari, the personality of Godhead. Purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. The polar star of the universe and the circle thereof is called the Sisumara circle, and therein the local residential planet of the personality of Godhead, Shirodakshay Vishnu, is situated. Before reaching there, the mystic passes over the Milky Way to reach Brahmaloka, and while going there, he first reaches Vaishvanara Loka, where the demigod controls fire. On Vaishvanara Loka, the yogi becomes completely cleansed of all dirty sins acquired while in contact with the material world. The Milky Way in the sky is indicated herein as the way leading to Brahmaloka, the highest planet of the universe. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. O king, when such a mystic passes over the Milky Way by the illuminating Susumna to reach the highest planet, Brahmaloka, he goes first to Vaishvanara, the planet of the deity of fire, wherein he becomes completely cleansed of all contaminations, and thereafter he still goes higher to the circle of Sisumara to relate with Lord Hari, the personality of Godhead. Okay, Srila Prabhupada here is explaining this verse, basically giving a simple explanation of a complicated subject, that is the cosmology of the universe, or the structure of the universe. And it's very interesting that there are circles on different levels. And this is confusing for some people. And but therefore, due to those circles, sometimes it's understood that the earth is flat instead of oval-shaped. And other types of adjustments of understanding due to different levels of circles in the universe. And then to go to the highest planet, that's like there's the pole star where Dhruva Maharaj lives, and the Lord is present there. And then there's also the area where Kshirodakshayi Vishnu is present. So there's a lot of details about the cosmology. A lot of it is explained in the 5th canto of Srimad Bhagvatam, and also here there's a short explanation of the structure of the universe. And he'll continue for a few more verses explaining this. What's interesting, however, is what Prabhupada was talking about earlier, and in order to understand these things, which are complicated, in order to see things properly, one must be willing to undergo tapasya. And Prabhupada gives an entire lecture about this in the Srimad Bhagavatam, 3rd canto, 12th chapter, 19th verse. So I wanted to go over this again. We discussed it somewhat previously, but it's so many profound points that he makes, and I think it's important to go over it some more. Because people are performing tapasya, but not to understand Krishna, to rather be dominant and an exploiter of the material nature. However, if they could use that same effort to understand Krishna in the authorized process, by the authorized process, they would actually gradually become liberated from the whole cycle of birth and death. So the question is, in life, what are we going to give our priority to? Are we going to prioritize trying to do something impossible, such as dominating the forces of nature? Or are we going to dominate, or in other words, free ourselves from the contamination of material nature? So most people don't understand this process of liberating ourselves from the contamination of material nature. And therefore, They waste all their time and energy doing things that are impossible to achieve, like going to the moon or going to Mars, or trying to find a way to make the material body eternal and to engage eternally in sense gratification in the material world. They're trying to violate laws of God that are inviolable, but they are led to believe by false philosophers and scientists that it's possible to do these things, and therefore they'll waste their whole life trying to do this, and they die and they take birth again. Sometimes they go up higher in the material world. Sometimes they come down to hell, and they suffer. But everything is suffering in the material world because without this transcendental knowledge of Krishna, one remains in the cycle of birth and death, even if one does all pious things. So this is hard for people to understand. Therefore, Prabhupada has gone over these points over and over again so that he can drive these points home. So he says, they are attempting so much to go to the moon planet, but we are doubtful whether they are actually going. But no benefit has been derived from such excursions. Simply you have spoiled your energy, time, and money. That means that people are conditioned, that you cannot violate the conditions of the nature. That's not possible. But they are thinking they are free. They can do whatever they like. That is called ignorance. Mudha, rascal. They are living under conditions, but they are falsely thinking that we are free. Is it not? Where is that freedom? Prakriti kriya mananam gunai karmani sarva sahankara vimudatma kartaham iti manyate. This rascal civilization do not admit this. They are so full that they are conditioned in every step, and still they're thinking that they are free. So this verse, 327, is fundamental to understanding the far-reaching effects of the laws of nature. So it says, the soul, bewildered by the influence of false ego, thinks himself the doer of activities that are in actuality carried out by the three modes of nature, of material nature. So we've mentioned this before, but this is something that most people would not accept, that they're not actually free. They're being forced to do things, forced to eat, forced to evacuate stool and urine, forced to sleep, forced to wake up, forced to work, and so many things we're being forced to do all the time, and we claim to be independent, forced to be born, forced to get old, forced to get sick, forced to die. So, two people might be working on the same level or the same job, but there may be a wide gulf of difference in their respective positions. So a person in material consciousness is convinced by false ego that he's the doer of everything. He does not know that the mechanism of the body is produced by material nature, which works under the supervision of the Supreme Lord. Yeah, I mean, we can accept that. We don't understand how this body is making blood, marrow, bone, tissue, and transforming food that we eat into stool and urine. We don't understand how we're making tears, how we're making plasma, how we're making pus, how we're making hair, how we're making nails, how we're making veins, how we're making tendons and ligaments, and all these things. We don't understand how it's working, how our heart is beating for such a long time without breaking down. And we can go through an exhaustive list of things that are happening in the body that we don't understand how it's happening. But yet it's happening, and the body is forcing us to do things that we may want or may not want. So Prabhupada explains that all this is controlled by Krishna. So we should understand it's being controlled by somebody because it's happening automatically. And we don't know how it's happening. It's happening in our own body, which means the body is under the control of somebody else. So the person in false ego takes all credit for doing everything independently, and that is the symptom of his ignorance. Yeah, one time Obama made a statement when people were criticizing him and saying, look, government really doesn't produce profit, and government doesn't produce large-scale industries or businesses that are successful. It's done by individuals. So Obama came back and he said, well, government gives you protection, government builds roads, government builds the internet, government builds this and maintains all these things. How can you say you've done anything? So he went the opposite way and completely rejected the independence of people who were big achievers like Bezos or Gates or all these people. He said they couldn't have done it without government. Right? So both points of view are right and wrong. Because, well, how are they right? Yeah, the people are, including the government as well as individuals, are expending a lot of energy trying to do things and getting sometimes very good results. So that's true. But it's not true that the individual is doing everything on their own, and it's not true that the government is doing everything that permits the individual to do things. Both points of view are wrong. What is right is that ultimately Krishna is the controller of everything. And Krishna is the source of intelligence in people. And Krishna is the source of energy. Krishna is the source of the body. Krishna is the source of the material nature itself. And there are rules and regulations that are functioning, whether we recognize it or not. We recognize it when we're forced to do things. But we're forced to do things all day long and all night long. So, therefore, both points of view, although they seem to be right, are wrong. The only point of view that's right is that Krishna is the supreme controller, and everything is under his control by his expansions, as beginning in the spiritual world and then going into the spiritual world through the material world through the Vishnu incarnations and expansions of demigods and expansions of living entities and so forth. So it's very difficult for people, including someone who's president of the United States, like Mr. Obama, or someone who's CEO of a gigantic company like Gates. It's very difficult for them to understand that the real doer, the real source of all this, all these elements that translate into success, intelligence, money, land, and equipment. All these things are ultimately coming from Krishna. They're not simply the fruits of labor of people. So, without Krishna, none of this could happen. So, he does not know, or such people who have false ego, they do not know that this gross and subtle body is the creation of material nature under the order of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Yeah, where did this body come from? Right? Do they know how this body was made? Such a complicated body. And how did it develop in the womb of a mother? Does the mother know how the body developed? No. I mean, when we start understanding what we don't know, then we begin to know, we can begin to know what is the reality. On the other hand, people start with what they think they know. So they have the Encyclopedia Britannica, which is the book of general knowledge, and it pretends that it knows so many things, right? But actually, we should begin with the encyclopedia of what we don't know, you see. Then we would become knowledgeable. And what we don't know, most of those things we'll never know. We might know partially or incompletely, and some things we'll never know. So it's very good to make a list of things that we don't know and might not ever know. See? So that should be another, besides our dictionary and besides our definition of words that are different than the Mayavadi's definition of words. That's part of our dictionary. We should, and also, aside from the qualities of Krishna that differentiate him from living entities, we should also write down a list of things that we don't know and probably will never know for sure. See? Like, first of all, how the body is being produced in the womb of the mother. We don't know how it's happening. And how the universe is functioning, how the body is functioning automatically, and how the universe is functioning in an orderly manner. How did that happen? Okay, so right away we have 3 points that we can put in our list of things that we don't know, and most probably will never know. Okay, so then it says that the ignorant man forgets that the Supreme Personality of Godhead is known as Hrishikesha, or the master of the senses of the material body, for due to his long misuse of the senses in sense gratification, he is factually bewildered by the false ego, which makes him forget his eternal relationship with Krishna. So here's a very important point, and we should note it, that by long misuse of the senses, in other words, you get trained in schools to misuse your senses for fruitless endeavors, attempting to control nature, attempting to violate the laws of nature that have been established by Krishna, thinking that we are independent. So therefore, an ignorant man forgets that the Supreme Personality of Godhead is known as Hrishikesha, or the master of the senses of the body, for due to his long misuse of the senses in sense gratification, well, that's what people are being taught to do, to misuse the senses in sense gratification. The living entity is factually bewildered by the false ego, which makes him forget his eternal relationship with Krishna. So this is a point that should be taught to our kids, and this is a point that we should assimilate first before we can teach it to anybody. That is, that as for long misuse of the senses for sense gratification, one becomes bewildered by the false ego. And then, because of that, we forget our eternal relationship with Krishna. So now, let's look at the opposite of that. For long use of the senses for understanding Krishna, one is free from the false ego, and then we never forget Krishna. Let's write that down. See? The exact opposite. So now we know the difference between real education and false education. Real education will teach us to use our senses, meaning the 5 gross senses, and the mind, which is a subtle sense, and intelligence, which is a subtle, is more subtle than the mind. We should use these things only in the service of Krishna. Then we will be free of false ego, and then we will always be able to remember Krishna. So then, if we talk about pedagogy, right? Pedagogy is, let's call it, the theory of how to teach knowledge. This should be the beginning point. This should be the beginning point of spiritual pedagogy. That is, that we should always use the senses for trying to understand Krishna in the service, and we should always use the senses in serving Krishna. Then we will not be bewildered by the false ego, and then we will never forget the Lord. As soon as we use the senses for sense gratification, we become bewildered by the false ego, and then we forget our eternal relationship with Krishna. This is what's going on practically in this world. And it leads to all kinds of crazy things. Wars and pestilence like the COVID, and tsunamis and earthquakes and windstorms and hurricanes and this and that. It's all happening because people are engaging the senses in sense gratification, and they're bewildered by this false ego based on the body. I am this body rather than I am pure soul, animating body with consciousness. And they're forgetting Krishna completely. Okay, so then Prabhupada continues. He says, to get freedom from all this, all these problems, he says, you have to work for it. Now, what do the Mayavadis do? They give up work. So therefore, their tapasya leads to imperfect understanding or incomplete understanding. But the devotees also work, but they're working to get freedom from this false ego and from this constant quest for sense gratification, using the senses for sense gratification. And they're actively trying to always remember Krishna, right? So Prabhupada says, freedom does not come so automatically. So he gives an example, just like if someone's diseased, so one is being controlled by a fever, just like in COVID. What's one symptom of COVID? This fever, and then difficulty breathing, and fatigue, and blocked sinuses, and all these things. They're symptoms. Fever is always a symptom of a battle going on between germs or bacteria and the immune system, right? So, or you have, let's say you're suffering from a boil, and it's very painful. So in order to get cured, you have to undergo tapasya. You know, you have to stop eating certain types of foods and things, and maybe you have to have a surgical incision into the boil to get the pus out, and so many things you have to do. I mean, you can usually heal boils by going on a liquid diet, and avoid all solid food, and keep your body very clean, because the boil can spread. If you get one boil, you end up getting 3 boils. Right? It spreads throughout the body, and you can get even more. So you have to keep the body very clean internally and externally. In other words, you have to purify the blood, and then you can get it. Or you can have it lanced by a surgeon and get all the pus out. Okay. So there are so many different difficulties in life, but tapasya means you have to tolerate them. And you have to be trained to tolerate. So in this way, people adapt to almost any environment that they live in. And even severe environments, like in India and Rajasthan, it gets to be 110, 120 degrees. Still people live in Rajasthan. Still they work. They get used to it. Or you like the Eskimos that live in the Arctic regions, where it goes to minus 40 degrees. And still they live. They build houses out of ice. They break the ice and catch fish, and still they live, right? Even in this extremely, in those extreme conditions. So, there's a saying in Bengali, Sarire na mahasaya ya sahabe tayatsaya, which means the body can tolerate any condition, provided you practice it or you train for it. So there are like these monks, Buddhist monks in Mongolia and other places like that, where they train themselves to do impossible things that normal people can't do. But they're trained to do it. They do all kinds of different exercises. And it makes their body so strong that it can withstand tremendous amount of punishment and severe conditions. So that's what this Bengali proverb says, that the body can tolerate any condition provided you train for it. It's not that you are under certain condition, and if you are changed, it becomes so intolerable that you cannot live. No. If you train, just like the people live in Canada, where sometimes it goes down minus 40 degrees, right? But they build their houses that are very, very well insulated, and they have all these different things. Immediately, if there's a snowstorm, all the roads are cleared by the municipality, at least the major roads, and there's extra production of electricity, and people have reserve, let's say, and gas or reserve fuel to withstand the period of extreme temperatures, so they don't freeze to death, right? So they've built up their infrastructure society to help the people survive through those conditions. And the people also have extra sources of energy in case the grid goes down. So we see that people can adapt to almost any condition. So therefore yogis, they adapt to living in the Himalayas, even in the wintertime, where it's completely frozen. And they do that by practicing or the body to withstand extreme cold and extreme conditions. So we don't realize what our body can do. So without tapasya, you cannot achieve anything, either material or spiritual. So therefore, in Lord Chaitanya and Krishna have made this tapasya simple for a devotee. No illicit sex, no gambling, no meat eating, no intoxication. That's better than sitting in a cave in the Himalayas at 40 or 50 degrees minus 50 degrees and tolerating it, or being immersed in the Ganges in wintertime in the Himalayas, which is what some yogis do, not very few of them nowadays. So instead of doing things like that, Krishna has made it easier by saying no gambling, no meat eating, no illicit sex, no intoxication. But even that is too difficult for most people to follow. So even though it's been made very, very simple. So Prabhupada says, but if you want to realize God, then there must be tapasya. Only tapasya and only penance by these two ways can one realize God. Otherwise, it's not possible. Therefore, there's no other means. If you want to realize the Supreme, the Absolute, you must agree to a certain type of tapasya. Otherwise, it's not possible. The preliminary tapasya is like at least respecting Ekadasi. That's also a type of tapasya, and there are Ekadasi days, usually twice a month. And you should take, as he says, a little fruit and milk. This is tapasya. And if we can't do this, if we're not prepared even to do this, then we're going to fail in spiritual life. Right? All right, so this absolute necessity of tapasya leads to great results. We begin to understand the presence of Krishna in everything. Andantarasta paramanu chayantarastam. This is Brahma Samhita 5:35. So Krishna is present in every atom. He's present in the heart of every living entity. So this is knowledge. This is what makes people Krishna conscious, when they accept these facts. It says in the Brahma Samhita, Krishna is the highest or the greatest of all entities. And he has a body which is Sat Chit Ananda Vigraha, eternity, bliss, and knowledge. And by his inconceivable powers, he can, at will, to create numberless universes. And all the mundane universes owe their origin to the transformations of his external potency. Again, his spiritual abode is beyond human conception, since all worlds are limited in the material world. His all-pervasiveness in the material world, in the localized aspect of Kshirodakshayi Vishnu, it's all-pervasive, yet his existence everywhere is beyond human conception, right? So this is what's called simultaneous and inconceivable oneness and difference. This has to be understood, this achintya bheda abheda tattva, by the devotees. Otherwise, we can't even begin to understand Krishna. If we think that it's not possible, then we remain an atheist. And there are so many atheists today because they don't accept that there's a being that has such unfathomable and infinite powers. Okay, so Prabhupada says, therefore our duty is that we should never think of the deity as something material, right? So once we understand Krishna's incredible powers, we should also understand that the deity is non-different than Krishna also, for several reasons. One, the energies that go into making the deity, earth, water, fire, air, ether, are coming from Krishna, and they're his separated material energies. And secondly, Krishna can turn anything material into spirit, and he can turn anything spirit into matter. So that's part of his inconceivable energies or powers. So Krishna is present in the deity, and if we understand that, then we have to act very carefully. There are 64 offenses that one can do in worshiping the deity. There are 10 offenses against the holy name, but 64 for worship of the deity. So this is explained in the Nectar of Devotion. So we see that we have to discuss this. We have to understand and avoid these offenses. And if we think that the deity is simply stone or marble or granite or whatever, or wood, then we're not going to see the deity properly, and we're going to commit many offenses in the process. So we should always feel and understand that Krishna is here personally present in the deity. Then it says, Krishna is very kind, therefore he appears in matter so that we can see him. This is his kindness. The Mayavadis, of course, reject it. Therefore, they reject the mercy of the Lord. But actually, devotees understand that the appearance of the Lord in his deity form, or Archa Vigraha, is his extreme mercy on the living entities. So what is, Krishna is also described as ahoksaja, beyond the perception of our senses. But out of his kindness, he appears in material elements in his original form and to accept our service. So that means that when you see the deity, you're seeing the mercy of the Lord directly. And normally we cannot see the Lord because we're conditioned and we're limited. Our senses are very, very limited. But yet, when we make an effort to understand the Lord, then the Lord seeing that gives us this opportunity of seeing him. So there's a verse, Atapite Deva Padam Bhuja Dvaya Prasada Lesanu Grihita Evahi. This says, my dear Lord, your lotus feet, Padam Bhuja Dvaya, can be understood by a person who has received a little favor of you. Atapite Deva Padam Bhuja Dvaya Prasada Lesanu Grihita Evahi. This is Srimad Bhagvatam, 10th canto, 14th chapter, 29th verse. One who has received little favor of the Lord, he can understand the Lord. And how about others? Na chas anya eko pi chiram vichinvan. If they speculate for millions of years, still they will not be able to understand. This is an extremely important point, that we should always endeavor to get the favor of the Lord by positive devotional service and following the rules and regulations strictly. Because if we go the other path, and that other path is what's taught in schools today, it's called speculation. Question everything, even the existence of God, and speculate. Just like Darwin, he speculated after going on a 5-year trip or a 4-year trip to South America and examining insects and birds and things like that. He speculated, how did this happen? See? And he came up with his theory of the origin of species. And it's all wrong. It's completely wrong. But and he makes statements that speculation is valid. It's a scientific part of the scientific method for him. Okay, so that's why Darwinism has never been validated. They keep claiming they have, but there's no real scientific validation that it's true. So, in the same way, many people have written speculative purports of the Srimad Bhagavatam, Bhagavad Gita. And because of that, people have been misled. And so it's only when Prabhupada wrote Bhagavad Gita as it is that people start becoming devotees. Before that, there were many translations of the Bhagavad Gita. Nobody became a devotee. You know. So if we follow the authorized process, if we follow the process in an authorized way, then we will understand. So whatever Prabhupada has given us is what Lord Chaitanya established. It's what the Acharyas have all, let's say, insisted on, that has to be followed. If we simply follow this, then we'll be able to understand. What are we going to understand? Matak parataram nanyat kinchid asti dhananjaya. Mai sarvam idam protam sutre manikanahiva. So, it means, this is a verse, 7th chapter, 7th verse. There's no truth superior to Krishna. Krishna is the most superior truth, and no one is greater than him, no one is equal to him. So if we accept this one statement, Bhagavad Gita 7.7, then we understand Krishna immediately. Otherwise, by speculation, we can go on for millions of years and never really understand. That's the fact. Just like Gandhi, he made the statement. He said, I don't believe that there was any person named Krishna that ever lived. Did you know that? He made that statement. So he couldn't understand. Dr. Radhakrishnan, he couldn't understand through his speculations. Lokamangala Tilak, he couldn't understand either. So Prabhupada says, so many big scholars, they have written commentary on Bhagavad Gita, but they have proved that they're rascal number one, because they did not follow the process of understanding Krishna. Therefore, they could not understand. And even a little child can understand. A little child can be taught Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And as long as they repeat that, they have more knowledge than Gandhi, Lokamangala Tilak, Dr. Radhakrishnan, and all the other speculators. So this is called following the authority of the parampara system. Yasya devi para bhaktir yata devi tata kuru tasyaite kata yartak pakasante mahatmanaha. This says that for one who has complete faith in Krishna and Guru, meaning Shiksha and Diksha Gurus, then Krishna reveals the knowledge to such a person. And for one who always engages in devotional service, unfailing in any circumstance, and always remembering Krishna and rendering favorable devotional service to the Lord gives such a person knowledge by which they come to him. Tesam satati yuktanam bhajatam pratipurvakam. And one becomes dear to the Lord, and the Lord gives them knowledge. So this is the process. This is the tapasya. This is actually Krishna consciousness. And if we understand Krishna in this lifetime, then we are a success. This is what should be taught to our kids. Otherwise, they're going to believe the speculators and the false philosophers and spend all their time and energy trying to achieve things that are impossible. Right? Now, so many things have been discovered by science, but they were already existing. They're not discovering things that don't exist already. See? So, but how to use those things correctly, that's the question. So when they do discover something, it's usually used incorrectly because they reject the existence of Krishna. So they will not use it in Krishna consciousness. Okay, so we'll stop right there for today. If we simply follow the process of Krishna consciousness, we'll achieve all perfection in this life. The 64 offenses against in the process of worshiping the deity, and also the 64 arts that the gopis have mastered are all explained in the Chaitanya, in the Nectar of Devotion and the Brahma Samhita. So we should take a good look at them to understand, not only the rules and regulations, but also the expertise that a devotee develops when they become Krishna conscious. Haribol. All glories to Prabhupada. I didn't say that. Did you hear me say that?
No, not you. I heard somebody saying like it's...
What's the name of that rascal?
No, it's not that.
Huh?
So for example, right now when the deities'
Yeah.
curtains are closed,
Yeah,
so can we still bow down?
of course.
Okay.
The deity is still there. They
Yeah.
they didn't disappear.
I think the explanation that they shared was that the deities are resting, so you, when you bow down, then you're actually disturbing their service. Is that the right?
I've never heard that myself. Maybe, I don't know. Have you, look, when a person says something, you have the right to ask, where is that in Prabhupada's books? Okay? So, if it's not there in Prabhupada's books, then, and you can just take it as a speculative statement. But when it says the deity is sleeping, see, this was an argument that the Hindus made against Lord Chaitanya's Sankirtan. They said, we're in a period right now where the Lord is in yoga nidra, in sleep. So by banging on drums and hitting the cartels, these Vaishnavas are disturbing the sleep of the Lord. Therefore, they made this argument to Chankazi, and so he believed them, and then he tried to stop the Sankirtan movement. And Lord Chaitanya organized civil disobedience. He came with 100,000 people banging on drums and cartels and surrounded the house of Chankazi in Navadvip and scared the hell out of him. He couldn't believe it. They didn't come with guns. They didn't come to burn down his house. But he was scared like anything. And Lord Chaitanya asked him to come out and have a discussion with him, and he came. And then he basically surrendered to the Lord. So that was their argument, that the Lord is sleeping in this period. So therefore this banging on cartels and singing will disturb his sleep. Therefore it's offensive. So, the Lord is taking rest, but that doesn't mean you can't give your obeisances. Okay. No, but you should go back to that person and say, can you show me where it says this? Now, if they show you, then you can come and show it to me. But I have never heard that. That you should not give your obeisances when the curtain is closed. So if I'm wrong, or it's not a question if I'm wrong, if Prabhupada has written that somewhere in his books, then that's what we should do.
Yeah, basically reference to Prabhupada. I think we should ask from now on if anything new that we don't know.
Exactly.
Thank you.
Haribol.
Yeah. I don't know where it came from.
Yeah, even I forget.
I
But
think it's like a
we'll
rumor mill
we'll
of
try to
people who work in various groups, and they're like, oh, don't do that, and they all sort of follow it.
Well, no. Whoever told that to you, ask him where that is said in Prabhupada's books.
Yeah, it was almost like a year ago, some lecture I heard, but I'll find that.
In this temple?
No, it was one of the ISKCON speakers only, not in this temple,
Uh-huh.
So I think it's one of the traveling brahmacharis, I think. So
Okay. Well, it's good.
We'll try to find the exact.
Yeah, you can send him an email. Ask him where Prabhupada said that, or where he got that from. I'm always willing to learn something new.